So this is the time of day where we invite the OpenShift product managers, engineering leads, as well as speakers to come up here, and it's your opportunity to ask any question you would like. So hopefully you've been saving them up, and we'll have somebody running mics to you all. Maltron, you're welcome to come up here too.
Should we just spread across the stage here?
Yes, yes, please. And I mean,
Go hide in this corner.
Daniel's volunteered to run a mic, but he is, when he's Quarkus, Java, if you have any of those questions, feel free. And of course, you know, we have Mike Barrett.
We're mic'd.
Yeah.
They gotta mute me.
All right, but we're gonna do a quick round of introductions so you know who everybody is, so you can track them down during the reception, during KubeCon. So again, meeting new people, seeing friendly faces. So
I'll move out of the way.
with that,
We got two of us to cover this. So.
okay, well, I'll just come over here and, hey. All right. And we have others that have just come up that we're excited to see, obviously. Okay, I'm going to start with Daniel. Can you introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. My name is Daniel. I'm a developer advocate and CNCF ambassador, which allows me a lot of opportunity to meet a lot of people, not only developer and SRE and DevOps engineer, fancy name people. And then I'm happy to be here. And then please ask us any kind of Java and platform, OpenShift serverless and service mesh, things like that.
Hi everyone, my name is Maciej. I wear a ton of hats. I'll try to call out just a couple of them. I'm a recent steering member elected to Kubernetes, working with 6CLI, so kubectl and all OC related stuff, working with majority of the controllers. So primarily Kubernetes and the community around the Kubernetes ecosystem. So I'm happy to help with all the questions you might have around those topics. Oh, and yeah, and within OpenShift itself, I'm one of the staff engineers. So basically the main folks that are trying to shape how OpenShift is looking these days.
Hey everybody, I'm Maltron. I'm the product marketing manager for Developer Hub based on Backstage and Service Interconnection based at Scupper. And those are two cool products that one, Scupper actually help us to replace VPNs in a much simpler way to interconnect applications, even using non-Red Hat products. And Developer Hub is also something Backstage, probably heard that, and help us developer productivity out there.
Hi, I'm Abby Bangser. I'm a principal engineer at Syntasso, and I'm also a co-lead of the platforms working group within the Tag App Delivery with Josh, who will introduce himself. I can answer questions around platform engineering and building what you need in your organization when it comes to platforms.
Hey, Josh Gavant, solution architect with Red Hat and a leader in CNCF's Tag App Delivery and working group platforms, and a CNCF ambassador now too. Talk to me about anything OpenShift. I'm really passionate about helping customers succeed with it. And of course, anything platform engineering, platform app delivery related.
I have my own mic. I'm Vincent Danon, VP of Product Security, longtime Red Hat employee and enthusiast. I've been doing open source security for over 20 years, so talk to me about security, or Linux, or pretty much anything else.
Hi, my name is Mike Barrett. I look after the product management team here at Red Hat that brings you OpenShift and a lot of the layered products.
Hi, William Caban, one of the technical product managers working under Mike, making OpenShift control plane successful.
And I'm Chris Battis, who you just heard from me. Run sales, solutions engineering, training, all of the non-build the actual product stuff at Fermyon.
I'm Matt Butcher. I'm the CEO of Fermyon, where we're building the next wave of cloud computing with WebAssembly.
And I'm Sally O'Malley, and I work in emerging tech at Red Hat platforms team, and that usually means I'm putting things together, gluing things, using things in new ways. I do a lot with Edge and OpenTelemetry lately, and love containers, anything containerized. Any reason to work with Dan?
I know. Where's Dan Walsh? Why aren't you up here? Okay, I see. We also have the whole cryo team. We've got Keycloak, Microshift. All right, so any questions after we went through all of that?
What comes after containers?
Oh, can I do that one?
Awesome.
I really will answer that one.
Answer it.
After containers, I'm not sure. I don't think containers will go away, just like I don't think virtual machines will go away. But I do think that we are discovering niches as we go and what kind of compute we need. What drew us to WebAssembly was that it solved a number of problems that containers and virtual machines did not solve. And so we very much think that WebAssembly actually does kind of represent this kind of third wave of cloud computing, where we had virtual machines and then virtual machines and containers, and then I think virtual machines, containers, and WebAssembly to kind of facilitate everything from virtual machines, which have got to be the stalwart thing that runs a workload for months, quarters, even years, right? Container, long-running processes that are going to last from, say, hours to, say, weeks, maybe months there, right? And WebAssembly really is, which is going to handle the workloads that go from, sub 1 second up to maybe a few minutes. So that's my view of kind of where computing is going, and maybe not after containers, but at least it's kind of the next wave that will augment the container ecosystem.
I have a question. WASM at the edge, do you see a lot of use cases for running WASM at the edge?
Yeah, we've got a lot of people. Matt, when trying to solve the serverless problem, right? And I don't think necessarily, and you correct me if I'm wrong, we're necessarily trying to think about how we do all the edge issues. We're thinking about how do we solve the serverless and better handle that and build a serverless that people would actually want and would solve all the things that containers just don't do really well because of the problems of scaling up and down. But we continue to get more and more people ask us about hey, I would like to run this here or here, and plugins and edge are two things that come up again and again and again because of the security model, right? So we've got one company that wants to allow EV charging companies to make their own plugins that run in the car. So when you plug in with the cord, they can sync, but they're I don't trust it. It has to be super efficient because it's running in a vehicle, right? And it has to be small so I can update it over the air, right? And I want to let them write it in whatever language they want. WebAssembly is perfect for that. So we continue to see these kind of use cases over and over again because it's a strength of WebAssembly.
I actually wanted to take it the other direction from Matt on what comes after containers. So you were going what's smaller than containers, and that makes sense. But actually, interestingly, in my group in CNCF, sorry, I have to bring that up again, we have a group called Artifacts working on bundling more than a container into an OCI image. And we're just hearing that in so many places where people are putting manifests and multiple images in there, turning OCI into more than just an image format, a generalized packaging format. So that's
we store Helm charts in using Artifacts, and we store WebAssembly using Artifacts.
Exactly, perfect, right. There we go.
I've been known to build an operating system image and put that in an OCI artifact.
I see you are plenty. Sorry. You are plenty on stage about product engineering. Most of my clients, they are struggle just to build one platform internally, and they are product manager, but they don't know about it. I mean, 99% of my clients, they are ops team building OpenShift for their clients, but they don't know what their client, what is a product, they're just running. And today we struggle to help them to be product team, but as a client, because you talk about security, implementing solution and so on, this is decision to take, this is decision to make it happen. And most of them, they're doing platform integration, support, operation, and so on in one single team. And I don't know if you help the client also on this side. My question maybe is not clear, but.
Mike, do you want to take that one?
What was the, you're looking for tools that allow you to be more efficient with these crazy platforms?
It's decision, how I'm building my own platform internally.
Yeah.
And making decision about everything selected, one of product or what technology. They don't know that. They're just managing a platform as they did with VMware before, you know?
Yeah. You know, so when we approach a situation, you heard from some customers today on how they bring their internal teams to the platform itself. You can't just build a platform. You have to evangelize it internally. You have to build a skill set. You have to go to the internal lines of business, and you have to teach them best practices. So there's quite a bit to get your sort of return on investment. But wherever possible, you want to mix in managed services. You want to leverage all the managed Kubernetes of the world that allows you to concentrate on those things. And you know, here at Red Hat, we obviously offer Rosa and Arrow, but there's a lot of alternatives out there as well.
So philosophically, I really like Vercel's push on the no-ops kind of thing, and I think that's something that we're going to see more and more of that brought through the enterprise. In that, like Vercel, like you're very specific, and that you have to live in their domain for the whole thing to work. And I think, you know, HashiCorp had a product called Waypoint that they've continued to they've underinvested in. But like the same sort of concept of like, let's let the developers write what the developers want to write and not have to think about all the operational issues. And then let ops go solve that by saying, hey, we would like to use OpenShift, and we would like to use Postgres, and we would like to use all of these things, and don't make the developer think about any of that. Make it so that the developer just has to say, at some point, I need to store stuff in a relational database. At some point, I need to store a secret. At some point, I need to go hit an AI service. And then, you know, it's cool if there's a cloud product out there that they can deploy to, and that makes it easy. And it's cool if they can do that locally, and that makes it easy. But really, when we look at the enterprise, like the enterprise should be able to say, like, hey, you can go build that, deploy it to our thing, think about it the same way, and then we in infrastructure can go wire up underneath that platform however we want.
I absolutely think that's like where we want to be, but what I think I'm hearing from you is a pain I know I have felt a lot, and through different titles of ops engineer and platform engineer and DevOps engineer and things, which is that there seems to be this concept of developer experience that seems to immediately indicate you're making web applications in kind of containers or serverless or something. But actually there's a lot of developers in a lot of different shapes. There's firmware, there's hardware, there's platform, there's infrastructure, and there needs to be better developer experience for those worlds. So that Vercel experience, we talked about platforms as a service as the experience that an organization wants and needs, is the developer experience for application developers. But someone in the organization has to build it. And I think that there is an investment going on right now. We're seeing it in our working group in what developer experience looks like for platform engineers. So happy to talk more about that in specific, but I think pushing for better tooling there is what's going to push for better tooling at the app level, because right now it's all leaky abstractions and Helm charts and things, which are just not good for anybody. So.
No offense, yeah.
Sorry. For no app devs.
A follow-up question to that. So you previously said there are lots of features in Kubernetes and people use only 20% to get their work done. What should I do with the other 80%? Should I lock them away? And how do I train my developers to use these 20% correctly? Is it like putting in a lot of linting, putting in an abstraction? I've seen people doing it in a bad way, so inventing new languages on top that are company specific. That was a bad way to do it. But what is the better way to do it?
So that exact problem statement is what created OpenShift 4. So when we looked at OpenShift 3, we opened the door to every single configuration possible in Kubernetes. And in 4, we took a step back and we asked our engineers, okay, let's have you codify into an API what all those configuration flags are for all the different components of Kubernetes in general, and make an operator that has a relationship to another operator. We call them CDO operators internally. I don't know if, Maciej, you want to talk at all about what that experience was like to carve up Kubernetes into operators and control the flags.
So yeah, a lot of the idea that we originally had around simplifying the user interface, or specifically the administrative interface, was to lock a lot of the configuration options that you were talking about, that there's like literally a ton of them, and lock them under several profiles, and then depending on the solution that we have underneath. So for example, for scheduling, we exposed 3 or 4 profiles that we tested in various scenarios. And then the user, instead of trying to tweak each and every single option per each and every single component in the cluster, they can just pick, oh, this is the best for whatever batch workloads that you are thinking about, or this will be better for web apps, and so forth. So making that extra step allowed us to have a little bit more freedom for the user so that they can rely on the experience that we have and allowing them to simplify the user interface, at least from the administrative perspective. I hope that at least partially answers the question.
I really enjoyed the talk about acceptable risk, and I had a question with the rise of like AI. What are the things that are exciting you about how that will impact OpenShift? And then what are the things that you're like, hey, maybe that's not an acceptable risk, we're worried about that?
I'm assuming you're asking that from a security perspective. I don't know what the unacceptable risk might be. I think that, well, let me take a step back. I think that there's a lot of possibilities around AI in general for ways to better understand security issues, security vulnerabilities. I think that if we can kind of harness some of that logic, that we can probably start to eradicate types of vulnerabilities at scale because we'll understand them better. And then kind of looking at, maybe your LLM is your vulnerability database in a way where it's actually like the vulnerable code, and you can actually start through a better heuristic process scanning through existing code and trying to find or predict other sorts of vulnerabilities that might be present that we just haven't found yet. So that's kind of exciting. I mean, that's not really OpenShift specific. From a security and OpenShift perspective, I'm not really sure kind of what sorts of things there might be possible there. I mean, if I look at something like ACS, maybe there's better understanding of kind of what's running in a container, kind of how the clusters are operating, or the nodes in the clusters are operating together. Those sorts of things I think could be very impactful from a visibility perspective, because I still think there's a lot of opportunity there where we can actually see, I was actually talking with somebody about this earlier, if there's a particular type of vulnerability, we rate it a particular way, let's say, I don't know, a Python module, for example, it's running in your container, you're like, oh crap, there's this Python CV that's listed on my list of vulnerabilities to fix, but I'm actually running a Java application. So why would you want to fix the Python vulnerability, right? Because the only entrance into that container is a Java application. So I mean, it doesn't take a lot of artificial intelligence to figure that part out, right? Just some intelligence. Sorry. So I mean, I think that there's better visibility into the way that containers are being used that we haven't really tapped into yet, that could probably help with.
I'll add a little bit, because actually the topic of the excitingness in the batch area was discussed earlier today during the Contributor Summit as one of the most promising areas for Kubernetes growth. And actually, if you look over the past a year and a half, I'm one of the person that is leading the batch work group within the Kubernetes project. The past 18 months allowed us to grow the capabilities of the native Kubernetes to run all sorts of AI, ML workflows, expanded the capabilities, because what we originally wrote in, I don't know, like 8-10 years ago was only that. It allowed us like only a very limited set of options for jobs, and the recent addition to index jobs. There are a couple of projects that are built around the batch work group as sub-projects, like Q or job sets that allow even further to expand the possibilities of the built-in Kubernetes that I know that we are slowly working on adding them to OpenShift as well. That is definitely one of those areas that you want to look into more, and the flexibility will be growing over the next probably at least a year or two, as I'm seeing where the batch work group and the amount of work that they are pushing forward.
I wanted to add, again, just in experimentation or ideation phases, think about this, with the availability of AI and more of these LLMs, basically now be able to run anywhere. One of the things that we can explore, and probably we are exploring, is the ability to, for example, describe what you want, either from operation perspective, and what if the system guide you through that process. Or what if you need to comply with certain regulations on the security, and you describe that, or this is what I need, and it knows how to interact with the different products or components and tell you, hey, this is what you should be doing here. So more like an assistant type of agent helping you, okay? So that's the type of things we could probably look at.
Okay, so my question regarding that would be, if we see that within AI, more types of like sensitive or confidential data is getting into the cloud or into containers, what would your recommendations be in order to secure the integrity of the AI models, or on the other hand, the confidentiality of the data you are processing in there?
Using attestations and signing and verifying everything along the way.
I don't know that I can give much OpenShift specific knowledge there, but we've been working on some of these same issues. So you have your LLM that gets pre-trained on a particular set of data. When you need to extend the LLM, you have several different options for making the LLMs, sort of context aware. And the way that we've been looking at it is, how do we take those modifications and not store them with the LLM, but keep them separate, and then at load time, be able to do. So there are a number of different ways to do this. Fine tuning is one of them. Some of them are just capturing a lot more of this in the prompt. But I think, the practices that are emerging from this are really just barely starting to emerge at this point. So the way we've been recommending things for people who have used serverless AI from Fermyon is, it is not yet the time for you to pack all of it, for you to kind of fine tune a model and then store the model somewhere else, right? And some of these like OpenAI, where you really don't have any control over the model, can be slightly more risky. But I think there is actually a way that you can use a lot of these, like SigStore, a lot of these verification tools to be able to say, okay, well, here's some data. We're going to keep it over here. It's going to be locked down. We're going to hash it. We're going to be able to guarantee that it hasn't been modified. And then when we do the inferencing through one method or another, we are going to overlay that on top of our LLM. But I still think we're fairly early on that. Do you have anything to add? Because I know you also worked on this, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a big trade-off in terms of security and cost, right? Like the easiest thing is like, let me go run an LLM for each unique workload and each unique user. But how many A100s would you need to go run that, and how quickly you're gonna be broke? So that's where we're trying to do is getting from WebAssembly, we already have this really tight sandbox around your application. And then we have these services here, like the vector databases we use for embeddings, and then some stuff we've done to improve prompt engineering. But then the LLM itself is actually a service in our mind, the same way that the database is a service or key value is a service. And so we're sharing that same LLM across a bunch of different users. But the trick is by controlling what goes in and out through our SDK, and then making sure we clear the memory on that every single time, right? And we're not storing any of those things, so we can prevent any bleed that's going to happen. And then it really comes okay, we've secured the application and provided so that it's much, much more difficult, or nearly impossible for your developer to write something that's going to cause this to bleed from one user to the next. And I think those kind of security controls that come with a platform that you use make that much easier to avoid those problems. Those problems are still scary, and right, it's as you look towards fine tunings, and we're about to support custom models that people will fine tune, right? Then it's really what did I fine tune this on, and is some of that fine tuning data going to come back out? And then you have that's more of all the problems of thinking about how you build this in the first place. I'm very convinced that people go to fine tuning way too fast, and that between context through embeddings and good prompt engineering and modifying your temperature and your p-values, you can get really good results from these public models. But I think most people are like, hey, the first thing I did didn't work. Let me throw a bunch of my data at it and then create my own model.
What about like confidential computing or homomorphic encryption? Is that something that would help in this space as well? Maybe Vincent knows. I'm going to quickly reach the limit of what I know.
Yeah, I mean, I actually appreciate a lot of the stuff that was already said because that's kind of where I was going as well. But I mean, at the end of the day, you're looking at just protecting the integrity and confidentiality of your data. And these are problems we've solved by and large, but not necessarily. It's just a new construct. So I don't know exactly what it looks like at the end of the day, but a lot of the foundational pieces are already there, right? So you can look at things like, for just standard encryption, the actual protections on the containers themselves. I mean, honestly, my biggest pet peeve is like, don't overload this stuff in terms of software, like using things like WebAssembly to really scale down like your threat surface, right? Those are going to be key because we have a tendency to like build big things with a lot of power and a lot of access, and you want to reduce that as much as possible. So specifically, one action per WASM, well, it's such a fun thing to say, or microservice, right? So you can really intentionally kind of control access to that data, which then also protects its integrity as well.